Welcome to our lesson for today. This is Chemistry Senior 2 Revision, and I have prepared an item for all of us which we can share, and then I'll talk about it. That is the activity which we are going to discuss this afternoon. And I would like to give you some time such that you can read through it. And if you have a pen and paper, you can write it down. And then we shall start our discussion. Thank you. Read for us the activity as others are writing. Someone can read through the activity such that we can see if everyone is here.
This teacher.
I hope my screen is okay now.
Yes, teacher.
It's now okay. I hope it's now big enough.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry for the... So has everyone finished writing down the activity? Have we? I don't know if we are together. I don't know what I'm even. If someone could tell me what is going on my side, because I cannot hear anyone. I don't know what's
So we
going
are
on.
together.
We are together. You can see the screen.
Yes, we can see it clearly.
Then I would have started long time. So that is activity 1. That's the activity which we are going to do this afternoon as senior 2 chemistry. And I hope everyone has gotten the chance to write down the item or to read it for themselves. So this afternoon, I simply want to help you senior 2s to learn how to approach such activities if they are given to you in the exam. And this is just a sample activity which my learners did in an external paper, meaning I'm not even the one who set this paper, but they had to do this activity. And I'm very sure such activities are going to become very common in exams. So let us learn, how do we approach such numbers when they come in the exam. In this activity, if I can read through it very fast, your community is facing a number of problems, which include changing the appearance and taste of water in the nearby natural water resources. Many people have respiratory diseases and their crops are coated with a mixture of dust and fine black particles. As a group of environmentalists, you have realized that the industries set up in your community and the continued use of plastics by the community members are the main cause of the problems. You have discussed the findings with the LOC1 chairperson of your community, who decided to organize a community meeting to sensitize the members about the causes of the problems in the area and how they can be solved. So what is our task? The task we have here is, as a leader of the environmentalists, organize a speech you would give to sensitize the community members. That is what you have to do. The product you have to give us in the exam is a speech, but we shall see what is expected in that speech, which you're going to write down. So the first thing I want us to agree on is the problems which they have identified in our activity. Are they real to our communities? So on that screen, I have 2 pictures which I'm sharing with you. This one is talking about the industries. On your right, you can see there a picture. And I got this from a newspaper, and the caption to that picture was saying, effluent from a factory in Injero Division being discharged into Nava stream that flows into the Nile. Yes, you can see wastes coming from the industries, from the factories, and they are flowing into a natural water source. I'm sure that the people in Injeru must be getting water from this Nava stream. And even if not, even the people living in front, ahead of the stream, like those ones who depend on the River Nile, this effluent, which is coming from the factory, really goes up to that, what? Up to that side. Then on your left, you can see there a picture of Kenyara Sugar Factory. Sometimes when they give you these activities, when they give you these items, they will put there a support material which shows factories. And some people think that in Uganda, we do not have these factories producing those fumes. This is a factory for Chinyara Sugar Works, meaning that yes, this pollution coming from the industries is very real even in our own country. Okay. What about the plastics they've talked about and the air quality? On your left, you can see Chitezi landfill. Previously, Chitezi has been a lesson of what happened in the recent past. Everyone knows Chitezi. if you can look at the people who are walking along that landfill, look at their height and then look at the height of the landfill, you can see that, yes, dumping this plastic, the plastics which we use, they create these landfills. First of all, because they cannot decompose, so they keep on being heaped and heaped and heaped. I lived in Chitez in around 1994, 93, and that's not the heap that was there. But you look, 20 years later, look at where the heap is. I think there are even parts of the landfill where it is even taller than that. So meaning that, yes, plastics are a real problem in our community. And then there is a newspaper headline that I came across whereby someone was saying that the Kampala air quality is a growing silent killer. And they even pointed out that transport is the leading cause, followed by domestic and biomass burning. Now we shall see how do we relate all these pictures to our scenario. When you are given such a question, to my learners, I asked them the challenges they are facing. And they told me that, madam, one of the challenges we are facing, my screen, that one of the challenges they were facing was that the items are too low. They don't want to read all those words. I told them it's fine, don't mind. As long as what you're reading, you're understanding it, then the items are very easy. So what do you do? When you get this very long item, what is the first thing you will do? Before you even start writing anything, evaluate the question, evaluate the item. What out for in this evaluation? Number one, which topics are being assessed in the test? Which topics are being assessed in the test? Now, if you can go to our task and you read through it, which topics do you think they are talking about? Identifying the topic which is being assessed is the first step to you answering such an item. And then on top of that, after knowing that, yes, topic assessed in this is being assessed in this item, then now you have to look for the particular content in the topic which is being assessed. For example, when I looked at this item, I asked myself, which topic? This is senior 2. It is second term. Which topic is this person looking at? After evaluating the item, I realized this person must be expecting a response from topics like air, from topics like water. And these are topics which we teach under our environment in chemistry. Then I said, so if the topics are air and water, which content is he looking at? Is he looking at the reactions of air with metals? Is he looking at the reaction of water with substances? I said, no, that could not be what the person is looking for. Then I realized that the item is basically on air and water pollution. Looking at the task they have given the learners, they want them to look at the sources and the effects of air and water pollution. So now my head is now only focusing on air, focusing on water as the topics in chemistry, and I'm focusing on pollution. Where does the pollution come from? And then what are its effects? Now, I want us to see how do we approach this item. After realizing that the topic is water and air, those are the topics, you will ask yourself, let me introduce you to how we approach this number. If you could think of one word which you can give to water and air, let me guide you on finding that word. You'll ask yourself, is water useful to man? Yes, water is useful to man. What do we use it for? Then you'll say, okay, it's useful. We use it for this and this and this. What about air? Is air also useful to man? Yes. In which way? Then at the back of your mind, you know that both air and water are useful to man. Then you know, what do we call something that is useful to man? What do we call something that's useful to man? Things which man needs, things which man relies on are what we call resources. Then, where do we get air from? What about water? Where does it come from? Have you ever heard of a factory where they mix this and that to make air or water? No. So how do we call things that exist on their own without the interference of man? These are things, they must be natural. If man has influence, it would be artificial. But since man has no influence on where the air comes from or where the water comes from, but we know that they are needed by man, then air and water are natural resources. So we are going to talk about air and water as natural resources. What are natural resources? We have seen that water and air are useful to man, and we have also seen that they are not made by man. And we have agreed that things that fit that criteria are known as natural resources. So I can have an opening statement which says, now I'm introducing my presentation. I can have a statement which says, air and water are natural resources. They satisfy many of our needs. That could be my opening statement. But then you ask, can the air or water get finished or used up from wherever they come from? No. So we have seen that air and water are natural, so cannot get. So we have a special name for those natural resources which we can use over and over again without worrying that they will get exhausted. Natural resources or resources like water and air, and they have a special name. We call them renewable resources. We've already seen why are we saying they are resources, why are we saying they are natural, and then why are we saying that they are renewable? This is because they will not get exhausted wherever they are coming from. Unfortunately, not all resources are like this. Not all these resources are like they will not get finished. Some resources can actually get finished. Yes, money needs them, but wherever we are getting them from, they can get exhausted. For example, fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are a natural resource. In Uganda, we have discovered our oil. It is a natural resource. Man did not put it there, but we know that we need the oil. But the oil can get exhausted from wherever it is coming from. Actually, even the trees that we have in our environment, if you do not replace them, or if you use them faster than you are replacing them, then they can be an inexhaustible resource. So when it comes to the vegetation, when it comes to the trees, yes, it is a renewable resource because we can grow the trees again. But if you use them faster than you are replacing them, they can become the other kind of resources which can get exhausted. So for such resources which can get exhausted, we have to use them sparingly. What name do you think we give to such resources? If the other resources which do not get exhausted are called renewable resources, what about these ones which can get exhausted? Yes. I know what you have thought about, and I'm sure many of you have come up with the word non-renewable. So you have to talk about the natural resources. And what will you have to talk about? Talk about the categories of natural resources. Which categories have we? Yes, I can see Daniela, that the Maria Angelo has identified them as non-renewable resources. That's very correct. Remember, we are opening our presentation. How did we open it? We identified that the air and water, which they have talked about in our scenario, they are natural resources and they can satisfy our needs. Now we are saying, what more can we add to our opening statement? You'll have to answer the question, what are the categories of natural resources? We have identified the two of them. We have said some resources are renewable, while other resources are non-renewable. So we have two categories of resources. After you telling us that we have renewable and non-renewable resources, do not get to define each category. Tell us what is a renewable resource and what is a non-renewable resource. We've said the renewable resource, we can replace it because it can be replaced faster than we are using it. But for the non-renewable resources, these ones are not replaced at a faster rate than we are using them, meaning that they can be exhausted. After telling us what each of these categories are, what they mean, then you have to give us examples. And when you're giving these examples, you don't have to be strict on only those examples which have been given in the scenario, in the item. This is now knowledge. You can tell us, yes, even if the item has not talked about fossil fuels, I know them as a non-renewable resource. So to conclude your opening paragraph, give the categories of natural resources and non-renewable, define each of them and give examples. Even if the examples are outside the scenario, it is okay. That is our first thing which we have to talk about. If you're looking at my screen, whatever I have put in bold, if you see something being put in bold, it means that that is very important. You must talk about. Okay, let us see what else should we talk about. What else should we talk about? As a learner of chemistry, we've already said our topics are air and water. When you think about water and air, what difference between the two substances comes to your mind? We learned these things in senior one. Maybe we have forgotten. But in chemistry, we learned that water and air are both substances. But if you were careful, if you were following your lessons, you would realize that air and water are different substances. They are substances, but they are of different types. You learned that an element, it can be a compound, it can be a mixture. So which type of substance is water? Is it an element? Is it a compound? Or is it a mixture? Yes, someone was saying they are fluids. Fluids are talked about more in physics. And Freddie has told us water is a compound while a mixture. That is very good. I see your responses. Very correct. So we can all agree that water is a compound while air is a mixture. But is the water in our resources pure water? Is it pure water totally? No. So can you describe the composition of water and then the composition of air? As you do that, in your next paragraph, you'll talk about the composition of these resources. If you remember something about water, yes, we've identified that water is a compound. After you telling us water is a compound, what is it a compound of? It is a compound of hydrogen and oxygen. You can even tell us the ratio of water and of hydrogen to oxygen. Or you can simply tell us, yes, water is a compound containing hydrogen and oxygen. But in our water bodies, it also contains dissolved minerals and many other things. You can also talk about that. And then what about air? We have learned that air is a mixture of gases. Then you can go ahead and ask, what are some, okay. Let me first see, Melissa. I'll come back to your questions later. I'll come back to your items. I will answer your queries at the end of the session. Let me first present. So we were talking about the composition of air. Why are we talking about the composition of air? We've seen that it's one of our natural resources which we are going to talk about in this presentation. And you've said air, and I've said air is a mixture of gases. So if it is a mixture of gases, can you give us examples of those gases? Can you even, if you're good, if you remember your chemistry very well, you can even decide to tell us which gas has the biggest percentage, followed by what? Yes, you can say nitrogen is the main component at 78%, and then it also oxygen. These percentages, you don't have to mention them. What is important is in you telling us that air contains this and this and this, just the composition. Then you can also talk about the moisture, the pollutants, which are in a very invariable compositions. They do not have a fixed composition in air. Yes, even the carbon dioxide, that is very correct. So another thing you have to talk about is the composition of natural resources. To remind ourselves, number one, you have to give us the categories of natural resources, define each of them, and give us examples. Number two, now we are talking about the composition of our resources. That those are two things which we'll talk about in your presentation. Yes. Okay. So far we have seen that water and air are natural resources and they have different compositions. It means that if something is a resource, it is very important to man. That is where we started from. The resource could be used directly as a whole. Yes, you use the water as a whole, or sometimes you only a particular component of the what? Of the resource. For example, in air, you could use only oxygen. You could have an importance for only the nitrogen, a part of the substance. But the benefits are not something which you will simply outline. Remember, we have, yes, the resource is something which we have to use. And we are saying that we shall also talk about the benefits or the importance of these natural resources, since a resource means something which is useful. Now, when we are talking about these uses, like I have said, the use could be for the whole substance, using the whole of it, or just a component. That's why in our previous paragraph, you told us about the composition of these resources, because for some resources, we may not use it as a whole, but we may get just one of the components of the resource, and then we can use them. But for emphasis, these benefits must be explained very well. How? Well, it must be explained. It means please do not just outline them. Let us see what a well-explained benefit looks like. So a well-explained benefit, in the simplest of terms, could have like three parts. Number one, you could identify the benefit, like what you would do if you simply outline what is this. Air does this. Yes, simply that. But for us, we are saying we don't want that outline. We have to explain it. So number two, what else will you? You have to describe the direct influence of the benefit or how it works. We are going to look at some examples and see what I mean? That is something which you will put in your explanation, the direct influence of the use of that resource. And then you can also talk about the outcome of the benefit, especially to the environment or to man. Man. I've given you there two examples. One is about a benefit of water as a resource. To identify the benefit, I simply said water is used for irrigation. That is just if I'm to outline, yes, water is used for irrigation. But so if we use water for irrigation, what does it do? What is the influence of water in irrigation? What role does water play during irrigation? And then I added the statement, water supports physiological processes in plants, which enables. Are you seeing that? And so far, whatever we have mentioned, we have not yet shown how that benefit reaches man or the environment. That is how I saying this leads to better harvests, providing food for man. So someone makes, how does water provide food for man? Are you seeing where it comes? Water is used for irrigation, which supports plant growth, and then it leads to better harvests, which provides food for man. That is an example. I can see many of the uses which you're giving me in the comment section. Yes, they are correct, but you are still at the outlining step. Can you explain that benefit you are putting down? Water is used for cooling machines in industries. Oh, I increase on my voice. Okay, fine. Someone is saying that water is used for cooling machines in industries. Continue to see how at the end of the day that benefit is going to impact the environment or man. So you have to get time, get all of these benefits of water, get all these uses of air, and make sure that you generate paragraphs which are well explained, because we don't want these points to be outlined. Only one score out of 3. And if you explain your point very well, they will give you 3 scores for each of those benefits. I also gave a benefit for air from air. Air is used by living organisms for respiration. Respiration is our use. How does respiration work? What is the relationship between air and respiration? The carbohydrates to release energy. Still, we are talking about air respiration releasing energy. Where does man or the environment benefit from now? Then you'll say that this energy which is released is very essential for the proper functioning of our bodies. Is used in the industry for cooling down machines, which prevents them from overheating and helps the industry to cut costs of repairs. You see how far you can go? Yes, your point was very beautiful, but I think how far you, because when the water is used to cool the machines, how is man going to benefit? At the end of the day, your point should show how man or the environment is benefiting from that particular resource. So the reason for breaking this up is for you to remember whatever in your benefit as you're writing that paragraph. But you don't have to follow this format strictly. I can even say water is very important because it is used to water the crops so they can grow well and give good yields. I have explained. Air is in balloons. For example, hot air balloons balloons, which are used maybe by the tourists, from which government can earn revenue. Understanding how to make your points beautiful. As teachers, we call them pregnant points, a benefit which is pregnant. Okay, air is used physically. Okay, that point has gone. But yes, keep on practicing how to write your points very well. Because for your points, the person who is marking your work will look at those three things. If you have only one of those, if you've only identified the benefit, they'll give you 1 score. If what it does, then they'll give you 2. And then if you have the benefit, how it works, and then how at the end of the day it impacts the environment or man, 3 scores. So you may all put down the same point, but one has 1 score, another one has 2, while another person has scored everything and they have 3. Make sure you learn how to write these. Okay. So far we have looked at 3 things which we must do. 1, we have to talk about the categories of natural resources. 2, position of the resources. 3, we also have to talk about the benefits of the resources which have been given in our scenario. But do you think that is all? What are we forgetting? If we can go back to our scenario and we read the last statement before the task, they wanted you to sensitize the members about the cause of the problems in the area or in the community. Who is not hearing? Please let me know. Debbie. Is Debbie the only person who is not hearing, or is it all of us?
We can hear.
You can hear then. Debbie, what could be your problem? Debbie, please, we don't want to leave you. Debbie, if you're back. Yes, Nantongo Jessica, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. Oh, my network. Sorry. Debbie, I hope you're back. And if you're back, oh, I think my network is on and it's not good. So I think that is what could be affecting me.
You are on, we can hear.
Okay, then let me continue if you can hear. So like I was saying that in our scenario, one of the things were telling us to sensitize the members about the causes of the problems in the area and how they can be solved. So we agree that every problem has a cause. And actually, most of man's problems are caused by man himself. Yes, by what we do, by our activities. We call them human activities. We have problems in our communities and they are being caused by us. So we can link a given problem in the community to a given human activity. That is 1. We have to link a problem to a human activity. Problems are there, and we know every problem has a cause, and we agree most of the problems we have in our communities are caused by human activity. And even after knowing that there is this problem, after knowing that there is a given problem and you have linked it to a given human activity, these problems do not just fall from the sky and all of a sudden they are there. No, it is a process. It is a process. So we have to explain how a given human activity is responsible for a given problem. Since you're talking to the community members, you have to help them understand such that they can see that whatever we are doing is the one which is bringing us these problems. And they also say a problem identified is a problem half solved, which means that many of our problems have solutions. But many times we are not able to remove the problem altogether at once. We may only do something and then we reduce its effects or the impact it has on us as human beings or on our environment. This is what we call mitigation. So let's do a small activity. In this community which we are talking about, which problems are the people facing? And which human activities can you link to these problems? We have to identify a problem and then we link it to a given human activity. So you look at the problems, link them to a human activity, and then you can come up with a table of this format whereby one, you have a community problem. But remember, you must have linked it to a given human activity. And we said that these problems do not just fall from the sky. It is a process. How is it happening? As you're describing how it occurs, you're showing the relationship between the problem. Okay, we shall show the scenario at the end of the lesson. Fine, fine. So you have to see, you have to show us how a given problem is happening. How does it happen? How does it occur? As you're explaining how it occurs, it goes back to a human activity within the scenario. And we have said that after identifying problems, we are halfway there to solving them. So we can write down solutions to that problem, especially after learning how it is happening. But we've said some of these problems, we may not take them away totally, but we may say, if we do this, at least it will not be that bad. We can only lessen the what? The effects, and that's what we call mitigation. So identify a problem, link it to a human activity, and then find a way of mitigating it. And then remember that one human activity can cause more than one problem to our lives or the environment. So it should not be that, okay, I've seen the activity that me is industries. Industries are changing the color of water. It could be that the industries are doing more than changing the color of the water. Even one problem could be coming from many sources, many human activities. So always be open-minded. Teacher, please repeat what mitigation means. Okay. Said that when we have a problem, the moment you identify a problem in real life, the moment you identify a problem, that's the beginning of solving it. So if we can look at our human activities and we see how they are causing us problems, that is half solved. So we have to talk about how we can solve these problems. But as slow as these problems come, that is as slow as they can go. Sometimes we cannot wake up one day, yes, the water is bad, it has a bad taste, and then we wake up in the morning when it is okay. We may do something only to lessen. We may not remove the problem altogether at once, but we can do something and we reduce the impact, we lessen the effect of that particular activity on a given, on our lives or on the environment. We may not call that a solution as such. We can say, no, we can say that we can mitigate. To mitigate is to lessen the impact of the human activity on the resources. Someone was asking, do I have to draw the table? No, I'm only using this table to guide you such that as you're writing this point, all these things should be there, such that you do not lose any scores. Just as we have 3 scores for each benefit, which is well explained. Even in this part, when we are talking about how the human activities are affecting the environment or humans, will also be given 3 scores. Where are the 3 scores coming from? Those are the 3 sections of that table that I have given you. So we just learn, how do I present my point? First of all, you have the community problem, link it to a human activity. There in that first portion where I'm saying a community problem, I should have continued and said community problem linked to human activity. And then we've said, describe for us, how is it happening? If it is the industries which are bringing about the change in color of the water, how is it happening? Tell us, what does the industry do? And then how does it end up changing the color of the water? And then after that, what can be done about it? All this in one point. Always make sure that this whole point is problem identified, problem described, problem mitigated. Those are the 3 scores. Blessing is asking me to repeat my previous explanation. I don't know which explanation. You type and I see which one you really mean, which explanation. Because we have already looked at categories of natural resources, their composition, we've looked at their benefits, and now we are looking at the effect of the human activities on our resources. What word is that before industries? I don't know. Where are you? The benefits. Okay, you want me to explain the benefits, Blessing, again? Okay. As some people are trying to generate that table, let me repeat for Blessing the benefit. I said that, let me go back. When you're describing your benefit, number 1, make sure you've identified the benefit. But don't stop at identifying the benefit just. That will give you only 1 score. It's not that you will get 0, no. They will simply give you a score for identifying the benefit. For example, saying water is used for irrigation. But remember, we are looking at this as resources. Resources, that's something which man benefits from. So after you telling us that water is used for irrigation, please go on and explain up to the point where I am seeing man benefiting. And these benefits can be to man or to the environment. So number 1, identifying the benefit, water is used for irrigation. Now tell us, what does this water do in irrigation? That is part 2. What does water do in irrigation? Irrigation is for crops. So the water supports the physiological processes in plants, which enables them to grow well. There you have explained the role played by water on plants. But that is not still where you stop. The point must go up to the part whereby man is benefiting. So if we use the water for irrigation, it will help the plants to grow well, and then man will have food. That is what I mean by explaining your benefit very well. So whatever point you have outlined in your book, go back and make sure you explain it to the point where man is benefiting, not forgetting to explain how the link between the benefit mentioned and then how it goes to man. Like air being used for respiration, it will release energy and then proper functioning of the body. So the releasing of the energy from respiration is the link between respiration and man benefiting by his body functioning very well. Okay, I hope you are now comfortable. So, lastly, yes, this is the activity you have been doing. Lastly, we are saying that you'll need to describe how human activities are affecting the natural resources. As you're describing how these human activities are affecting the natural resources, for every problem the community has, look for a human activity that could be causing it. I have said one problem in the community could come from multiple sources. For every source of this problem, describe how it occurs and how it can be mitigated. We have explained what mitigation means. And when we are explaining this, this is where now our chemistry comes in. In some cases, it may mean that you have to talk about chemical and physical reactions. Chemical reactions like burning fuels, physical reactions like dissolving things in water. You may have to talk about them. It's not a must, but you have to talk about them. For that one who is lost, I will make a summary at the end. Don't mind. Don't mind. I will make a summary at the end and we'll see if you can catch up. And then I will also talk about, sorry, it has skipped my mind. So after that activity, I'm now sharing with you my table. I'm now sharing with me what I came up with. In my first column, I have the problems. I have the problems which were being faced by that community. Those are the things which you have to identify first. Change in appearance and taste of water, respiratory diseases, crops coated with dust and fine dark particles. Now, I can see many of your responses, and those responses are wrong. But what I always advise you, the learners, stick to the scenario. Stick to the problems which are within the item that you have been given. Stick to the problems which have been identified. Stick to the human activities. Stick to the human activities which are within the scenario. If they've not talked about cutting down trees, don't waste your time talking about it. They will, whatever they will put in that item is enough for you to answer. As you go outside the scenario, you may be now you may need to write these things from cram work, but just understand these things. Someone is crying. I don't know why they are crying. So that's why I said the first thing, get a problem and link it to an activity which they have given you. For us, the activities they gave us industries, they gave us plastics, I think. I don't know, I'll go back to the scenario. So if we have industries and we have plastics And these are the problems, the 3 problems they have given us. For each problem, I try to link it. And you don't have to write a lot. No, you don't have to write a lot. Just make, even if you generate like 3, 4 of them. Melissa, I will attend to your questions at the end of the presentation. It's okay. I will just write down all your questions. I will attend to them after this presentation. So for the problem of change in appearance and taste of water, I imagined that probably the industries release wastewater into the what? Into the water bodies. And this wastewater is dirty. Probably that is what is changing its appearance. Which chemistry is there? I am saying that the wastewater is dissolving into our water bodies. That is chemistry. That is dissolution. Me saying it's dirty, it means it's going to make the water in our natural sources also dirty. Now, another point which I came up with. Yes, some of these points, you may not see them directly, but if you were attentive in class, then you would know that, yeah, it comes in. I say that probably the wastewater is hot. And when the wastewater is hot, it changes the temperature of water. Now you will ask, how does that change the appearance and the taste of water? This is going to kill the aquatic organisms. And if they die, they will start decomposing. And as they decompose, they are going to affect the appearance of our what? Of our water. Through eutrophication, having even a bad smell. I also thought, now this is me thinking, maybe this wastewater, the waste oils from machines, because these are factories, these are industries, they have machines, they are using oil for lubrication. So this oil which comes from these machines, the oil which is waste, maybe it is floating on what? On the water. And since this oil is dark, it's black, when it floats on water, it means the water is not going to be clean. It's not going to look well. You can remember when we were separating mixtures, we talked of liquids having different densities and one floating on top of another. The chemistry is there. So don't worry about writing it. And then what can I do about that? If the industries are releasing wastewater, which is mixing with the water in our natural resources, changing its appearance and taste. If the wastewater is hot and it's killing aquatic organisms, which decompose and change the appearance and taste of water. If waste oils from these machines, they are floating on water, what can be done about it? What can be done? One of the solutions I have is that at least that the industries treat these wastes before they are disposed into the water bodies. Some people write points like industries should not dispose these wastes into lakes and rivers. Like we said, sometimes there are things which are beyond our control. We know that natural water bodies are the main areas where most of these industries dump their waste. So when we tell them not to dump the water into the water bodies, is it viable? If they don't dump it into the water bodies, where will they put it? On the ground, where we grow the crops. So mostly we see that dumping wastes into these water bodies is the most viable option for these industries. But then let them treat the industrial wastes before dumping them into the water bodies. And another option I can have for such a problem, let the people filter their water. We can use water from National Water and Sewerage Corporation. For them, they've already got this dirty water and removed everything which is dirty, and then they give you the water which is clean. Madam is saying that since the water, they can affect the water. Yes, okay. So another solution would be to use filtered water, because as we wait for the industries to respond to cleaning their wastes, and even if they clean the wastes, still this water will not be good for human consumption. So let us use water which has been filtered. For example, the one from national water. Okay, I will not talk about the others. Okay, so just first, the respiratory diseases. I assumed that the films which I showed you pictures of these industries to show you that yes, even as we have industries which produce these fumes. Waste fumes can contain allergens. What are allergens? These are the particles which can trigger allergic reactions, and allergic reactions are known to set off respiratory complications. Then they also told us that these people, yes, madam, I think filtering water is underwater treatment. It's okay. Still under the topic of water, it is very okay. You're very right. You can bring it in. It's very okay. Because underwater treatment, you were taught, why do we treat this water? Because the water is not clean. The water does not look right. That's why they treat that water. And one of the things they do when they are treating water, they will filter it to remove all these dirty things. Okay, I was still talking about the respiratory diseases. I've talked about respiratory diseases causing allergic reactions. Then we can even ban plastics. We talked about plastics as being one of the environmentalists realized that it could be one of the causes of why people are having these problems. So I want to bring in the plastics. We know that plastics are pollutants also. And for us, sometimes to reduce these plastics, we are forced to burn them. And when we burn them, they are going to release toxic gases, which are dangerous to our respiratory systems. Now, where does our chemistry come in? We burn the plastics, they are released into the atmosphere, where air is. Our topic, remember, in our topic, we say that one of the topics which we are examining is air. And then these gases are going to mix with the air. It will be, the pollutants are part of air. So when we breathe in this air, we take in even the pollutant gases, which are coming from where? They are coming from the waste fumes from the factories, and they can also come from burning plastics. So they are the ones probably causing the respiratory diseases that the people are having. I didn't exhaust all of these points. I just gave a few, which I even believe are much enough. So now what can we do about them? How can we improve the air quality? This air quality which is affecting people by giving them respiratory diseases. We can say, let the factories use catalytic converters. These ones will help to turn their toxic waste gases into less toxic substances. For example, they can convert the carbon monoxide into carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide will not cause any respiratory complications for human beings, much as it also has its other problems. For those ones who have already handled the topic of carbon in the environment, you have already looked at it. I'm not bringing in points which come from carbon in the environment because some of us have not yet done that topic. But as you go into that topic, you will realize that we could bring it into our scenario. But I'm trying to say at your level, they can give you this question and the content is there which you can write about. Another point, what can we do about the plastics? We can say, let us recycle the plastics. You can talk about recycling, what are its benefits of recycling, what are the benefits of recycling, what are other ways apart from recycling, upcycling, things like that. You can talk about them. Remember, you have to explain these points. Then the crops coated with the dust and fine dark. For this one, I brought in the carbon in the environment topic because I couldn't do away with it. But I know when your teacher was talking about air pollution, yes, we can also reuse. Junior, you're right. Why I've brought in the dark particles, why I've brought in incomplete combustion of fuels. There is no way your teacher could have explained the points of air pollution without talking about the soot. Soot is among the pollutants which we find in air. How do we get it? How do we get it? It comes from incomplete combustion of fuels. It could be in industries, it could be in vehicles. I've not talked about the vehicles because in my scenario, these environmentalists said we are going to stick to the industries and plastics. Okay. Then we also have dust particles, which are pollutants in air. So naturally, they will be there. Maybe this place has dusty roads, and then they will end up coating the crops. And how can we solve that? We can select the combustion chambers in these industries be cleaned regularly to prevent the formation of unburnt carbon. That word is unburnt carbon particles. The carbon particles, the dark particles, are because the fuels are not being burnt completely. Why? The oxygen is little. So we have to clean the combustion chambers such that enough oxygen can be used to burn the fuels in our industries, and then we can reduce the amount of soot being formed. I hope I'm clear on how to explain the community problems, where they are coming from, and what can be done about them. So that table was just a summary. You have to explain, bring out the chemistry. For example, in my first point, I simply said wastewater from the industries as causing the change in color and taste of what? Of water, but I've not explained. In my explanation, I'll talk about eutrophication, which I'm very sure your teacher has explained very well. And I can also talk about dissolution, this water dissolving into the natural resources, into the water which is coming from our natural sources. That is what I will include in my explanation. Not just outline, explain. Explain how it occurs. Yes. And then what about the wastewater becoming hot? Yes, tell us, how does wastewater, make our water bodies hot? The water is used to cool machines. Remember, you even gave it to me as one of the uses of water. And yet you even related it to these people having industries. I liked that. So the water is used to cool machines. As the water is being used to cool the machines, the wastewater becomes hot. And when it is released into the water bodies, it will reach there and still change the temperature of the water in our natural water bodies. This change in temperature is going to affect the living organisms there, and then they will die, and then they will affect the quality of our water. When it comes to the allergens, how do they explain? Don't just state it, explain. The allergens are going to cause inflammation, and then you talk about coughs, that you have to explain. Then about the incomplete combustion, under what conditions does incomplete combustion occur? You talk about the limited oxygen which is entering the combustion chambers, which I said we should even resolve by cleaning them such that enough oxygen may enter. And you may find that sometimes as you're explaining these points, you may need to write equations. If you see that your point which you are explaining can be brought out very well using an equation, go ahead. And when it comes to this equation, it does not have to be the formulae equation. At your level, senior 2, remember you've not even learned them, but you've already learned the word equations. You learned them probably in senior 1, that x plus y gives us z. You can simply write it in words. It is okay. Fuel plus little oxygen gives me soot. Write that. We shall understand. Okay. So in summary, in summary now, let's pay attention to the summary. We have learned that our presentation should have 4 main things. Number 1, the categories of natural resources. The categories of natural resources. These ones, we have identified them as renewable and non-renewable. Then give us the reason for giving us those categories. In other words, define that category of natural resources. Renewable resources are these and these and these. Then give an example. For example, if you know more than one example, fine. If you're not sure of more than one, find at least one. You may be tempted to write more than one example and the second example is wrong. You'll lose then points for that. So write what you're sure of. Then we have the non-renewable resources. Tell us what non-renewable resources are and then give us an example of a non-renewable resource. But like when it comes to the vegetation, the trees, some people say they don't see the trees in chemistry. For those ones who have already covered the topic of carbon in the environment, you looked at the vegetation as a source of fuel. You've already learned about this. So please, the trees are also natural resources and we learn about them in chemistry. So that is 1. Give us the categories of natural resources, define each category and give an example. Give an example. You do that, you have very good scores there. Number 2, talk about the composition of natural resources. You can stick to the ones within the item such that you don't have to overthink. You can say water as a natural resource has this and this and this. Chemically, it is this, but then we also have physical properties of the what? Of the water. You can even talk about when you're giving the composition of the natural resources. It is okay. You can talk about the composition of natural resources which are outside the scenario. For example, in this scenario, we didn't bring out the fossil fuels. But if you have that information and you want to talk about the composition of resources which are non-renewable and you want to talk about fossil fuels, it is okay. But I would implore you to stick to those ones which are within the scenario such that you don't have to overthink. I saw someone here saying, I'm going to cram, I'm going to cram. Cram work is good. Yes, it will may make life easier for you, but you may cram and end up writing things which are outside the given scenario. You'll have beautiful points, but which are not related to the scenario. And then you'll have your point the teacher has put there, seen. Why? Because it wasn't a scenario. You are talking outside of what is required of you. Imagine you're talking to this community. You're talking about natural resources. They already have the resources within their community. And this is the problem we are talking about. Then for you, we are here in Kalangala. You are talking about things which are happening in Mubende. These people don't know what is happening there. We are saying this presentation is for this particular community. These problems are for this particular community. This particular community has its own resources. Talk about those. Talk about their resources. Talk about their problems. Talk about their solutions. I think you can see where homework is going to take you off. It is okay as long as whatever, if you crammed, make sure what you crammed is within this scenario. You may even get a scenario where they give you only one human activity. Now, if you're not conversant with how you will explain the content of that, you may have a problem. So let us try to understand these things. And I'm sure if you keep practicing, you will see that even the cram work is not necessary. So far, number 1, categories of natural resources, renewable, non-renewable, define them, give example. Number 2, composition of natural resources. It can even be about resources which are outside the scenario. Then we talk about the impact of human activities on the natural resources. This has to be explained. In your explanation, tell us how it occurs. These people are having water whose color and appearance, whose appearance and taste has changed. This is because they have industries within their community. The industries release the wastewater, which is dirty, into these natural water bodies. Or when it mixes, when the wastewater mixes with the natural water, it's going to change its color, it's going to change its appearance. And then after that, talk about how this can be mitigated. Please let the factory people make sure that they treat their wastes before they dump them into the water bodies. Alternatively, people should stop consuming this water, which will make them sick, and then resort to the water which has already been treated. We even have some people who treat this water in their homes. They don't have to use the one from national water. And even at school, we teach you about this cleaning this water using available resources. You can decide to say, let me go home and set up a filtration, something which we can use to filter the water we use at home, such that even if we are getting water from a dirty river, we find a way of making it usable. Maybe by filtering it using the sand, stones, gravel thing, because we teach this under filtration. Apply the things you learn at school back home. And then lastly, you also have to talk about the benefits or importance of the natural resources. I described to you what a good benefit looks like in this presentation, and you can write about 3 or 4 of them. Yes, identify the benefit. Water is used for irrigation. Tell us, what is the role of irrigation to the plants? When you irrigate your crops, they will need this water for their physiological processes. They grow well. At the end of the day, how does man benefit? Because we are looking at resources benefiting man or the environment in which man lives. So that should come in that, yes, when the crops grow well, man will have food. I'm trying to explain these points in simple terms such that you can see, yes, you can always find of us. It doesn't have to be complicated. No, use simple words as long as you've talked about everything that is required of you. So I hope you are now okay. There is something I want to tell you. In this item, the item we have been discussing, the sources of the problems were given directly. But that won't always be the way. In many cases, you will only be given the activities being done in the community, and then the problems being faced by the community. They will not tell you that, yeah, these problems are the ones responsible, these activities are responsible for these problems. Your job will be to link the activities, the problems in the community. So from our discussion, I have brought up a number, an item which you can try to practice and see if you can generate a good presentation which you can write in the exam for numbers which are related to resources. I've still tried to look for one which is within the content that you have covered. For those ones who can write it down, you can write and then you practice following the tips which we have learned. In this one here, we have Tororo district, which is growing very fast. But for it to grow very fast, the swamps have to go and the forests have to be removed. Stone quarrying is also being very popular, such that people can cash in on the construction, which is going going on. Now, the senior citizens, people who have all been there for a long time, are wondering why the wells and springs are drying up and the water is not fresh. They have also noticed changes in the seasons and poor harvests. Like I told you, step number 1, where is this coming from? I will give you the topics which you will always bring into your mind. But now, identify the problems, put them there, the other side. Find the what? Identify the activities which man is doing, put them one side. On the other side, put there the problems which the community is facing. Then you start to match them. We used to do those things in mathematics, one side and then the other side. And sometimes you would see that from one point, you can even get arrows. You do that. The moment you come up with that, then you are good to go. So which activities here are linked, can be linked to the wells and drying up? Make sure that you join them. Springs, wells drying up, forests being cleared. So explain to us what's the relationship between forests being cleared and wells drying up. Explain. How does it happen? And then give us a solution. If the water is not fresh, which activity is responsible for it? And then you'll have a very good presentation to write down. Make sure all those 4 things are there. The categories explained, the composition, the impact of activities on the natural resources, and then the benefits of the natural resources. And you can try to stick to those ones which are within the scenario. So I don't know if you're still writing the question, but I want to share with you the topics about natural resources. Which topics talk about natural resources? We have rocks and minerals. Those are natural resources. And this even includes the soil, because you've learned about weathering, the formation of soil from the rocks. So the soil is also a natural resource. You've learned about that in senior 1. We've also talked about water, talked about air. Some of you have already finished carbon in the environment. Others are yet to. And we also have another natural resource, which is fossil fuels, which Uganda is even about to start putting to use. So those are the topics. So now that one brings us to the end of this lesson. I hope I have been of good to you, and I hope it can benefit you in your exams next time. For those ones who are still interested in writing the question, it's there. Now I want to respond to your questions. Someone is telling me to first go back to the question which we used for this. I hope you can see the question which we have been discussing. That's the question we have been discussing. For those ones who are interested, you can take a screenshot. Ruthie, can you see the sample question well now? That's the sample question we had. And then I'll bring back the one which you can practice on. So now I want to respond to your questions. Maybe if you can unmute yourselves. Myra, jangu ampe kupeni.
What should you say, boss?
Cannot. Okay. Yes, I'm sure someone was told to record this lesson. For some of you who missed some parts, I think you can contact him to send you the recorded lesson. You'll even find there the tasks which we discussed, and then even the one which you can use. So today we've looked at how to respond to items of sources. Maybe next week we shall also look at how to respond to another category of questions. Okay. That one was writing the practice question. I'm taking you back there. I don't know if you can see it now. That's this question. I'm now waiting for your queries. And then we can end the lesson. If you have nothing,
Those who have queries should raise up their. Excuse me, teacher.
yes, please.
I think those who have queries should raise up their hands. Like Melissa K.
Yes. Yes, Melissa
Please
K can.
unmute. Melissa K, unmute. Your hand is up. Oh, she's not responding.
Maybe she can type.
She's muted. Melissa K.
Excuse me, teacher.
Yes, please.
Teacher, you said that the community problem should be linked to the human activities. But
Yes.
I'm not seeing how that's linked to human activities.
You're not seeing the human activities.
No, you said they are supposed to be the community problems are supposed to be linked with the human activities.
Yes, you have to do that. What's your problem? What's the problem?
But in the I don't know if the examples, in the examples you gave us, I'm not seeing how they are linked to human activities.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, can you like explain something like that?
Okay, let me look.
Thank you.
But we had the table here. Welcome. So I hope you remember this table that we had, okay? You remember this table? If you do, here we are in the first column, we identified the what? The problem. And then after identifying the problem, you have now to look at the activities which are in the scenario. Which one is responsible for that particular problem? When I look at the change in appearance and taste of water, remember that the human activities they gave us were use of plastics and then the industries. So now I ask myself, is it the plastics which are changing the appearance of the water, or is it the industries? And I'm like, I think it's the industries which are responsible for the change in the appearance of, I don't know if you're hearing me, that the industries are the ones which are responsible for the change in the appearance of water. Now, you have to explain how. And I was like, the industries release wastewater into the water bodies. And if this water is dirty, then water being that is a good solvent, it dissolves this wastewater and then it also changes its appearance. So I have linked a problem, which is change in the appearance and the taste of water, to a human activity, which is industries. But I have to explain how. I have to come up with an explanation. How are the industries responsible for the problem of change in appearance and the taste of water? The wastewater being released into the water bodies, where the water acts as a solvent and becomes dirty, it
Any other any other person with a question? Is O and you should be joining in some
Go. Why do you want to?